My name is Harper Brown. I am 18 years old, and 6 months ago I confessed to crimes I never committed in order to save my 12-year-old sister from the man who was molesting her. I told the police that I was the one abusing Emma, that I was the one hurting her, that I was the dangerous person she needed protection from. I lied under oath, I signed false confessions, and I prepared myself to go to juvenile detention for crimes that were being committed by my mother's boyfriend while my mother refused to believe the truth. Everyone asks me if I regret it. The answer is complicated because my plan worked exactly the way I intended it to, but the cost was higher than I expected and the legal consequences will follow me for the rest of my life. Emma is safe now, living with our aunt in another state where Keith Morrison cannot touch her. Keith is in prison for child sexual abuse, and my mother finally understands what kind of monster she brought into our home and chose to protect over her own daughters. But I spent 4 months in juvenile detention for confessing to crimes I never committed. I have a permanent criminal record that will affect every job application and college admission for the rest of my life, and I will carry the psychological burden of having described sexual abuse of my own sister in graphic detail to convince police that I was a predator. But Emma is alive. Emma is safe. Emma will grow up knowing that someone loved her enough to sacrifice everything to protect her. And sometimes being a woman means making the hardest choice imaginable, choosing to destroy your own life to save someone else's, even when that someone else is the person you love most in the world. I should start from the beginning, though, because this story is not just about the day I confessed to fake crimes. It is about 18 years of learning that the adults who are supposed to protect children do not always do their job, and that sometimes you have to become the adult who protects them yourself even when you are barely more than a child. It is about watching my mother choose financial security over her daughter's safety, about realizing that the justice system only works when adults are willing to believe children, and about accepting that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is the most illegal thing you can do. My mother Linda met Keith Morrison when I was 16 and Emma was 10. Mom had been single for almost 8 years since our father died in a car accident, and she was lonely and vulnerable and desperate for someone to help her feel like she was not drowning in the responsibility of raising 2 daughters on a waitress salary that barely covered rent and groceries. She worked double shifts at a diner called Rosie's, coming home exhausted and defeated every night, too tired to help with homework or listen to our problems or be the kind of mother she wanted to be. Those 8 years after Dad died were hard on all of us, but they were especially hard on Mom. She had been a stay-at-home mother when Dad was alive, completely dependent on his income and his decision-making. When he died suddenly at 32, she was left with no job skills, no savings, and 2 young daughters to support. She took the first job she could find and worked as many hours as they would give her, but it was never enough. We lived in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment where Emma and I shared a room and Mom slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. We ate macaroni and cheese 4 nights a week and got our clothes from thrift stores and Goodwill. Mom cried herself to sleep most nights, thinking Emma and I could not hear her, but we could hear everything through the thin walls. I tried to help as much as I could. I babysat Emma after school so Mom could work evening shifts. I learned to cook simple meals so dinner would be ready when Mom got home. I helped Emma with her homework and made sure she brushed her teeth and got to school on time. I became a surrogate parent to my own sister because Mom was working too hard just to keep us housed and fed. But it was not enough. Mom was drowning in responsibility and loneliness, and she was desperate for someone to save her. That desperation made her vulnerable to someone like Keith Morrison. Keith seemed like the answer to her prayers. He was charming, attentive, generous with his money, and patient with her children. He was 42 years old, divorced, with no children of his own. He worked in construction and made good money, enough to help Mom catch up on bills that had been piling up for years. He brought flowers when he visited, took us out for expensive dinners at restaurants we had never been able to afford, and treated Mom like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. For the first 6 months, Keith was perfect. Too perfect, as it turned out. Keith moved in with us after dating Mom for only 4 months, which seemed fast to me but made Mom happier than I had seen her since Dad died. She started smiling again, started wearing makeup again, started believing that maybe she deserved to be loved after all. The financial stress that had been crushing our family for 8 years suddenly disappeared. We moved to a bigger apartment with separate bedrooms for Emma and me. We started eating real food instead of processed meals and day-old bread from the diner. Mom was able to cut back to normal work hours instead of pulling double shifts every day. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. Mom had been through so much after Dad died, working 2 jobs to keep us fed, crying herself to sleep when she thought Emma and I could not hear, turning down dates and social opportunities because she was too tired or too broke or too worried about leaving us alone. She deserved to find love again. She deserved to have help with the bills and the housework and the overwhelming task of being a single mother to 2 girls who had lost their father too young. But something about Keith made me uncomfortable from the very beginning. He was too interested in Emma, too affectionate with her, too eager to help her with her bath, to tuck her into bed, to have long private conversations with her about girl problems that he said Mom was too busy to handle. He bought Emma expensive gifts constantly, clothes, jewelry, toys that seemed too mature for a 10-year-old girl. He took pictures of her constantly, especially when she was wearing the revealing outfits he bought for her. He insisted on being the one to drive her to school and pick her up, even though Mom was perfectly capable of handling those responsibilities. Most concerning to me was the way Keith looked at Emma. There was something predatory in his gaze when he thought no one was watching, something that made my skin crawl and my protective instincts flare. He studied her body when she walked around the house in pajamas. He made comments about how mature she was getting, how developed she was for her age, how she was going to be a heartbreaker when she got older. He found excuses to touch her constantly, adjusting her hair, straightening her clothes, putting his hands on her shoulders or back or thighs during casual conversations. When I mentioned my concerns to Mom, she told me I was being jealous and suspicious and that I should be grateful Keith cared about my sister. "He is just trying to be a good father figure," she said when I pointed out that Keith spent more time with Emma than with her. "You girls have not had a man in your lives for so long, you do not know how to recognize healthy male attention. Keith is showing Emma what it feels like to be valued and cherished by a man who cares about her. Mom, the way he looks at her is not fatherly. And some of the things he says about her body are not appropriate. Keith is not saying anything inappropriate. He is just proud of Emma and wants her to feel confident about herself. You are reading something sinister into perfectly innocent affection. What if I am not reading something sinister? What if something really is wrong? Then you are damaging this family with paranoid accusations. Keith is a good man who is trying to help us build a stable, secure life. He does not deserve to be treated like a predator just because you have trust issues stemming from your father's death." That conversation taught me something important. Mom was not going to protect Emma, because protecting Emma would require Mom to admit that she had brought a dangerous man into our home. And Mom would rather believe that I was paranoid and jealous than face the possibility that Keith was not who she thought he was. She had made her choice, and that choice was Keith's financial support and emotional companionship over her daughter's safety and peace of mind. So I decided to protect Emma myself. I started paying closer attention to Keith's behavior around my sister, documenting everything I observed in a journal that I kept hidden in my bedroom. I noticed that he volunteered to help her with her bath every night, even though she was old enough to bathe herself and had been doing so independently for years. I noticed that he insisted on tucking her into bed personally, with the door closed, for conversations that lasted longer and longer each night. I noticed that the gifts he bought her were increasingly inappropriate lacy underwear, crop tops, short skirts that were designed for teenagers rather than elementary school children. Most disturbing, I noticed that Emma was changing in ways that suggested trauma. She became withdrawn and anxious, spending more time in her room with the door locked and less time playing with friends or participating in activities she had previously enjoyed. She stopped being the chatty, energetic girl she had always been and became quiet and jumpy, especially around Keith. She started having nightmares and wetting the bed, things she had not done since she was much younger. She became possessive of her privacy, insisting on changing clothes in the bathroom instead of her bedroom, locking doors that she had never locked before, and refusing to wear the revealing outfits Keith bought for her. When I tried to discuss these changes with Mom, she had explanations for everything. "Emma is just getting older," she said dismissively. Girls her age start wanting more privacy and become more self-conscious about their bodies. And of course she is tired, she is growing so fast and her body is changing. As for not wanting to spend time with Keith, that is probably just a phase. Pre-adolescent girls often go through periods where they resist male authority figures. She will come around once she adjusts to having a father figure in her life again. Mom, what if it is not a phase? What if Keith is doing something to her that is making her uncomfortable? Harper, I am warning you. If you keep making these accusations, you are going to destroy this family. Keith has been nothing but wonderful to us. He pays half the bills, he helps with housework, he treats both of you like his own daughters. We were broke and struggling before he came along, and now we are stable and secure. Do not ruin that with your suspicions and paranoia. So, our financial security is more important than Emma's emotional well-being? Emma is perfectly fine. Keith would never hurt her. You are the one who is hurting her with your paranoid behavior and constant suspicion. You are creating problems where none exist. What if I am not creating problems? What if I am recognizing problems that already exist? Then you are wrong and you need to stop before you destroy the best thing that has ever happened to this family. That conversation taught me that Mom had made her choice, and that choice was Keith and the financial stability he provided over the possibility that her younger daughter was being harmed. She had decided that it was easier to believe that I was causing problems than to investigate whether Keith was the problem. She had chosen to prioritize her own comfort and security over her children's safety, and she was prepared to silence me to protect that choice. But I was not going to make the same choice. I was going to choose Emma no matter what it cost me. The first time I really knew something was wrong was about 8 months after Keith moved in. I came home from school early because of a teacher conference day and found Keith and Emma in the living room watching a movie. Emma was sitting on his lap, which was not unusual, but something about the scene made my stomach turn. Keith's hand was on Emma's thigh, moving slowly back and forth in a way that was clearly sexual rather than paternal. Emma looked uncomfortable but was not saying anything, just sitting very still and staring at the television screen. "Emma," I said loudly, "come help me with my homework." She jumped off Keith's lap immediately and followed me to my room. When I asked her if Keith had done anything that made her feel weird, she shook her head and said everything was fine. But she would not look me in the eye, and she spent the rest of the evening in her room with the door locked. That night, I tried to talk to Mom about what I had seen. "Keith was just being affectionate," she said immediately, not even allowing me to finish describing what I had observed. "Emma is not used to having a father figure, so she might seem uncomfortable at first. But that is normal. She will adjust to Keith's parenting style." "Mom," he was rubbing her thigh in a sexual way. "That is not normal father behavior. Harper, you are being ridiculous. Keith loves Emma like she is his own daughter. You are reading something sinister into perfectly innocent physical affection. Maybe you should examine why your mind goes to sexual places when you see a man being kind to a child." "There is nothing wrong with my mind. There is something wrong with the way Keith touches Emma. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the way Keith treats Emma. He is gentle and loving and patient with her, which is exactly what she needs after losing her father so young. You are the problem here, not Keith. What if I am not the problem? What if something really is wrong and you are refusing to see it? Then you are damaging this family with false accusations. Keith is a good man who is trying to help us. He does not deserve to be treated like a predator just because you have trust issues." That conversation taught me that Mom was not just in denial about Keith. She was actively choosing to protect him over Emma, and she was willing to gaslight me to maintain that protection. She had decided that Keith's presence in our lives was more important than Emma's safety, and she was prepared to sacrifice Emma to keep Keith happy. I started documenting everything I observed more systematically. I took pictures of the inappropriate gifts Keith bought Emma. I recorded conversations where Keith made comments about Emma's developing body or her maturity for her age. I noted the times when Emma came out of Keith's room or the bathroom looking upset or disheveled. I was building a case, even though I was not sure what I was going to do with it. The breakthrough came when Emma was 11, about a year and a half after Keith moved in. I was doing laundry and found a pair of her underwear that had been torn and was stained with what looked like blood. When I asked her about it, she said she had fallen off her bike and scraped herself. But she had not ridden her bike in weeks, and the stains were not in places that would make sense for a bike accident. I took pictures of the underwear before washing them, then sat Emma down for a serious conversation. Emma, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to tell me the truth. Has Keith ever touched you in ways that made you uncomfortable? I cannot tell you, she whispered, and she started crying. Why can you not tell me? Because he said if I tell anyone, something bad will happen to Mom. He said people will take me away from her and she will be all alone and it will be my fault. He said Mom will hate me if I ruin her happiness. Emma, Keith is lying. Mom will not be alone. I will be here with her. And nothing bad will happen to her if you tell the truth about what Keith is doing. But what if he is right? What if telling makes everything worse? What if Mom chooses Keith over me? Mom would never choose Keith over you. You are her daughter. You are the most important person in her life. But Keith makes her happy. Keith pays for our food and our apartment. Keith buys us nice things. What if she thinks I am lying because I want to go back to being poor? Keeping secrets is what makes everything worse, not telling the truth. Tell me what Keith has been doing to you. It took 2 hours for Emma to tell me everything, and it was worse than I had imagined. Keith had been molesting her for over a year, starting with innocent touches during bath time and gradually escalating to sexual abuse that happened whenever Mom was at work or asleep. He had convinced Emma that this was normal, that all stepfathers did these things with their daughters, and that she would get in trouble if she told anyone. He had threatened to hurt Mom, to leave us with no money, to make sure Emma got taken away by social services if she ever said anything. The abuse had escalated significantly over the past few months. Keith was now requiring Emma to perform oral sex on him several times a week. He was taking explicit photographs of her that he claimed were just for him, but that Emma feared he might show to other people. He was telling her that she was special, that she was mature for her age, that this was how men showed love to the women they cared about. He says I am his girlfriend now, Emma told me through tears. He says that when I turn 13, we are going to have a special ceremony where I become his wife. He says Mom will understand then, that she will be happy for us. Emma, Keith is not your boyfriend and he will never be your husband. What he is doing to you is called sexual abuse and it is a crime. He is hurting you and it is not your fault and it has to stop. But how can it stop? If I tell Mom, she will not believe me. If I tell other adults, Keith says they will take me away from Mom. If I tell the police, Keith says he will hurt Mom. I do not know what to do. I know what to do. I am going to stop Keith from hurting you, and I am going to make sure you are safe. How? I do not know yet, but I promise you that Keith will never touch you again. I promise you that you will be safe. And I promise you that none of this is your fault. After Emma told me everything, I held her while she cried and promised her that I was going to stop Keith from hurting her. I told her that she was brave for telling me that none of this was her fault and that I was going to make sure she was safe. But privately, I was terrified and overwhelmed by the responsibility of protecting her when all the adults in our lives had failed. The next day, I went to Mom and told her everything Emma had told me. That is impossible, Mom said immediately, not even pausing to consider what I was saying. Keith would never do something like that. Emma is just confused, or she is making things up for attention. Mom, look at the evidence. Look at how Emma has been acting. Look at the torn underwear I found. Look at the way Keith behaves around her. I am not going to entertain these ridiculous accusations. Emma is 11 years old. She does not understand what she is saying. She probably heard something on television or at school and is confusing it with reality. She understands exactly what she is saying. She understands that Keith has been molesting her for over a year while you refuse to see what was happening right in front of your face. Keith is not molesting anyone. You are putting ideas in Emma's head. You are the one who is damaging her with these sick thoughts. I am not putting ideas in her head. I am listening to what she is telling me. And what she is telling me is that Keith has been sexually abusing her for months. Emma never said anything like that to me. If something was really happening, she would have told me. She tried to tell you. But every time she hinted that Keith made her uncomfortable, you told her she was being silly or that she needed to give Keith a chance. You made it clear that you would not believe her if she told you the truth. I would absolutely believe her if something was really happening. But nothing is happening. Keith loves Emma like his own daughter. No, Mom. Keith loves Emma like his victim. There is a difference. You are sick, Harper. You are twisted and jealous, and you are trying to destroy our family with these disgusting lies. Fine. Then let me call the police and report what Emma told me. If Keith is innocent, an investigation will prove that. Absolutely not. I am not going to let you destroy our family with false accusations. If you call the police, I will tell them that you are lying, that Emma never said any of those things, and that you are a troubled teenager who is jealous of my relationship with Keith. So you are going to choose Keith over your own daughter? I am choosing the truth over lies. And I am choosing to protect this family from your destructive behavior. This family needs protection from Keith, not from me. Keith has never hurt anyone in this family. Keith has only helped us. Before Keith, we were poor and struggling and barely surviving. Now we have a nice home, financial security, and a man who loves us. I am not going to let you destroy that because you have psychological problems that make you see threats where none exist. That conversation taught me that Mom was not just in denial about Keith. She was actively complicit in Emma's abuse, because she was willing to silence Emma to protect her relationship with Keith. She had decided that her comfort and financial security were more important than her daughter's safety, and she was prepared to sacrifice Emma to keep Keith happy. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to do. I could call the police myself, but I was a minor and Mom had already said she would contradict anything I told them. I could call Child Protective Services, but they would need evidence of abuse, and Keith was too careful to leave obvious physical evidence. I could try to get Emma to talk to a counselor at school, but Keith had convinced her that talking to adults would result in terrible consequences for our family. Every option I considered had the same problem. Adults would not believe Emma and me without physical evidence, and Mom would actively work against any investigation. Keith was smart and manipulative, and he had spent over a year grooming not just Emma but our entire family to trust him and dismiss any concerns about his behavior. The system was designed to keep families together, which meant that authorities were reluctant to remove children from homes without clear proof of abuse. I researched child abuse reporting procedures online and learned that most investigations began with reports from mandated reporters, teachers, doctors, counselors who had observed signs of abuse. But Emma had not exhibited obvious signs at school, and Keith was careful to avoid causing injuries that would be noticed by medical professionals. I also learned that children were often not removed from homes unless there was immediate danger or clear physical evidence of abuse. I needed a way to force the system to take our situation seriously. I needed a way to make sure Emma was removed from Keith's reach immediately, before he could hurt her worse or convince her to recant her story. I needed a way to guarantee that there would be a thorough investigation, regardless of what Mom said. The more I researched, the more frustrated I became. The system was designed to protect families, but it was not designed to protect children from families. It assumed that parents would act in their children's best interests, and it provided few options for situations where parents were enabling abuse or refusing to protect their children. And then I realized what I had to do. I had to become the evidence. If I confessed to abusing Emma myself, the police would have to remove her from our home immediately. They would have to investigate thoroughly to determine the extent of the abuse and identify any other victims. During that investigation, they would interview Emma privately, away from Keith's influence, and she would be able to tell them the truth about what had really been happening. It was a desperate plan, and it meant sacrificing myself to save Emma. But I could not think of any other way to guarantee her safety. I spent a week preparing for what I was going to do. I researched how child abuse investigations worked, what charges I would face if I confessed to hurting Emma, and what would happen to her during the investigation process. I learned that false confessions were rare but not unheard of, and that they sometimes resulted in wrongful convictions if not properly investigated. I also learned that juvenile offenders who confessed to crimes often received lighter sentences than those who denied guilt and went to trial. I wrote letters to Emma explaining why I was doing this and asking her to tell the truth to the investigators even if it meant getting Keith in trouble. I prepared myself mentally for the possibility that I would spend months or even years in juvenile detention. I accepted that I would have a criminal record that would follow me for the rest of my life. Most importantly, I made sure Emma understood what was going to happen and why. "I am going to tell the police that I hurt you," I explained to her one evening when Keith and Mom were both at work. "They will take you away from here immediately to keep you safe. Then they will ask you questions about what really happened, and you need to tell them the truth about Keith." "But Harper, they will put you in jail." "Maybe. But they will also stop Keith from hurting you. And eventually, when they figure out that Keith is the real abuser, they will let me out of jail." "What if they do not figure it out? What if they think you really did hurt me? Then I will stay in jail, but you will be safe. That is more important. I do not want you to go to jail for something you did not do. And I do not want Keith to keep molesting you. One of us has to make a sacrifice, Emma. I am older, I am stronger, and I can handle jail better than you can handle continued abuse. But it is not fair. You should not have to protect me. Mom should protect me." "You are right, it is not fair. Mom should protect you. Police should protect you. Social services should protect you. But none of them are doing their job, so I have to do it for them." Emma cried and begged me not to do it, but I had already made up my mind. This was the only way to guarantee her safety, and I was prepared to pay whatever price was necessary. On a Tuesday morning in October, I walked into the police station and asked to speak to someone about reporting child abuse. The officer who met with me was a woman named Detective Sarah Collins, who specialized in crimes against children. She was kind and patient, and she made it clear that she took reports of child abuse very seriously. "What kind of abuse are you reporting?" she asked as we sat down in a small interview room. "Physical and sexual abuse of my 12-year-old sister." "Who is the perpetrator?" I took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "I am." Detective Collins looked surprised, clearly not expecting that answer. "You are reporting that you abused your sister?" "Yes. I have been hurting Emma for several months. I hit her, I touched her inappropriately, and I threatened her to keep her from telling anyone. I know what I did was wrong, and I want to confess." "How old are you?" 18. "And your sister is 12? "Yes." Detective Collins made some notes, then looked at me carefully. "This is a very serious accusation you are making against yourself. Do you understand that confessing to child abuse could result in criminal charges against you?" "I understand. Do you want to have a lawyer present before we continue this conversation?" "No. I want to confess now, and I want Emma removed from our home immediately. She is not safe there." "Why is she not safe? Are there other people who might hurt her?" "There might be. I just know that she needs to be somewhere else, somewhere away from our house, while you investigate what I did to her." Detective Collins spent the next 4 hours taking my statement. I told her that I had been physically abusing Emma for months, hitting her when she annoyed me and threatening her to keep her quiet. I told her that I had touched her inappropriately on multiple occasions, and that I had convinced her to keep it secret by telling her that our family would be destroyed if anyone found out. I described specific incidents of abuse, including the night Emma's underwear was torn and bloodied. Everything I told Detective Collins was a lie, except for the physical evidence that actually existed. I was careful to confess only to things that could be corroborated by Emma's injuries or behavior changes, so that my confession would seem credible to investigators. I described escalating patterns of abuse that matched the timeline of Emma's emotional deterioration. I invented details about my supposed motivations and methods that would explain the evidence without revealing Keith's involvement. The hardest part was describing sexual abuse that I had never committed against a sister I loved more than anything in the world. But I forced myself to give detailed, believable accounts of molesting Emma, because I knew that the more serious my confession, the more urgently they would act to protect her. I started by touching her over her clothes, I lied, my stomach churning as I spoke. Then I made her touch me. Eventually, I made her perform oral sex on me. I told her it was normal, that all big sisters did this with their little sisters, and that she would get in trouble if she told anyone. How often did this abuse occur? Several times a week for the past 6 months. Usually when our mother and her boyfriend were at work or asleep. Did you ever penetrate your sister? No, but I threatened to if she told anyone what we were doing. How did you convince her to comply with the abuse? I told her that if she said anything, our family would be destroyed. I told her that our mother would hate her for lying about me. I told her that she would be taken away from our family and put in foster care where worse things would happen to her. Why are you confessing now? Detective Collins asked when I had finished describing the abuse. Because I know what I am doing is wrong and I want to stop. But I do not think I can stop on my own. I need help and Emma needs protection. Have you told anyone else about this? No. Emma tried to tell our mother, but our mother did not believe her. Mom thought Emma was making things up or confused about what was happening. What about your mother's boyfriend? Does he live in the house? Yes, Keith lives with us. But he does not know what I have been doing to Emma. I was careful to abuse her when he and Mom were not around. How would you describe your relationship with Keith? He is okay. He is good to our mother and he helps with bills. He tries to be a father figure to Emma and me, but we are not really comfortable with that because our real father died when we were younger. Detective Collins asked me dozens more questions about my relationship with Emma, our family dynamics, and the specific details of the abuse I was confessing to. I answered everything as consistently as possible, making sure my story would hold up under investigation long enough for Emma to be removed from Keith's reach. Finally, Detective Collins told me that she was going to place me under arrest for child abuse and that Emma would be taken into protective custody immediately. What happens to Emma now? I asked. She will be placed with a foster family or a relative while we investigate your allegations. She will also be interviewed by trained specialists who work with child abuse victims. Will she be safe? She will be very safe. And Harper, I want you to know that it took courage to come forward like this. Many abusers never admit what they have done or seek help. The fact that you are confessing voluntarily will be taken into consideration during your sentencing. I was arrested and taken to juvenile detention while Emma was removed from our home and placed with our Aunt Jennifer, Mom's sister who lived in another state. Mom was furious and heartbroken, calling me a monster and demanding to know how I could have hurt Emma and then lied about it for so long. Keith played the part of the shocked and supportive stepfather, offering to do whatever he could to help the family through this crisis. I cannot believe this, Mom sobbed during her first visit to see me in detention. How could you do this to Emma? How could you hurt your own sister? I am sick, Mom. I need help. But why Emma? She is just a baby. She trusted you. I do not know why. I just know that I could not stop myself and I knew I needed help. Keith is devastated. He loved Emma like his own daughter and now he feels like he failed to protect her from you. I am sorry. Sorry is not enough, Harper. Emma may never recover from what you did to her. And our family is destroyed. Keith is talking about moving out because he does not feel comfortable staying in a house where something like this happened. That conversation was agonizing because I had to maintain my false confession while listening to Mom praise the man who was actually molesting Emma. I had to pretend to be guilty of horrific crimes while watching Keith manipulate Mom into feeling sorry for him. But I also felt hopeful because Emma was safe and the investigation was beginning. For the first week, everything went according to plan. Emma was safe, and I was in detention where I could not supposedly hurt her anymore. The investigators had physical evidence that corroborated my confession, and they had a perpetrator who had admitted guilt. Seemed like a straightforward case. But then Emma was interviewed by a specialist in child sexual abuse, and everything started to unravel. Dr. Patricia Reeves was a forensic psychologist who had been working with child abuse victims for 15 years. She was trained to recognize signs of coaching, false memories, and other complications that could arise in abuse cases. When she interviewed Emma, she immediately noticed several things that did not make sense. First, Emma's description of the abuse did not match the confession I had given. She described being touched and hurt by someone much larger and stronger than me, someone with rough hands and adult body hair. She used words to describe sexual acts that she could not have learned from someone my age, words that suggested her abuser was an experienced adult rather than a teenager. Second, Emma seemed confused and distressed when Dr. Reeves asked her about me hurting her. She kept saying that I would never hurt her, that I was the only person who protected her, that I was the one who made her feel safe when she was scared. When Dr. Reeves asked her to describe specific incidents of abuse by me, Emma became agitated and insisted that I had never touched her inappropriately. Third, Emma kept mentioning Keith in ways that suggested fear and anxiety. She talked about not wanting to go home because Keith would be there. She talked about being afraid to take baths or go to bed because that was when bad things happened. When Dr. Reeves asked her to clarify what bad things, Emma said she could not tell because it would get people in trouble and Keith had warned her that terrible things would happen if she talked. Through several hours of careful questioning, Dr. Reeves was convinced that Emma had been sexually abused, but not by me. She believed that Emma was protecting someone else, someone she was afraid of, someone who had threatened her into silence. Emma, Dr. Reeves said gently, I know this is hard to talk about, but I need you to tell me who really hurt you. Was it Harper? Emma started crying. I cannot tell you. Harper said I should tell you, but I am scared. What are you scared of? I am scared that Keith will hurt Mom if I tell. I am scared that you will not believe me. I am scared that Harper will get in trouble for trying to help me. Harper will not get in trouble for trying to help you. But she might get in very serious trouble if she is confessing to things she did not do. Did Harper really hurt you? No. Harper never hurt me. Harper is the only one who listened when I tried to tell her what was happening. Harper is the only one who believed me. Then who hurt you, Emma? Keith. Keith is the one who touches me and makes me do things. Keith is the one who said he would hurt Mom if I told. Keith is the one who said it was normal and I should not tell anyone. Dr. Reeves spent another hour getting the full story from Emma about Keith's abuse. Then she immediately contacted Detective Collins to report that they had the wrong suspect in custody. The 18-year-old who confessed is not the perpetrator, Dr. Reeves explained. She appears to have confessed to crimes she did not commit in order to get her sister removed from an abusive situation. The real perpetrator is the mother's boyfriend, Keith Morrison. Detective Collins was skeptical at first. False confessions were rare, especially detailed confessions like the one I had given. But when she reviewed the evidence with Dr. Reeves's findings in mind, she started to see inconsistencies she had missed before. My confession included details about Emma's injuries and behavioral changes, but it did not include the kind of personal, intimate details that real abusers typically revealed when confessing. I had not mentioned any sexual gratification or emotional satisfaction from the abuse, which was unusual for someone confessing to sexual crimes. I had been very focused on making sure Emma was removed from the home immediately, which was not typical behavior for someone who was genuinely confessing to hurting her. Most tellingly, when Detective Collins reviewed the timeline of Emma's behavioral changes, they corresponded exactly with Keith moving into the home, not with any escalation in my supposed abuse. Detective Collins came to interview me in juvenile detention 3 days after Emma told Dr. Reeves the truth. "Harper," she said, "I need to ask you some follow-up questions about your confession." "Okay." "Emma has been interviewed by Dr. Reeves, and she says that you never hurt her. She says that Keith Morrison is the one who has been abusing her." I tried to maintain my story. Emma is confused. She does not want to get me in trouble, so she is making up stories about Keith. I do not think Emma is confused. I think you made a false confession to get her away from Keith. That is not true. Harper, making false statements to police is a crime. If you confess to abuse you did not commit, you could face charges for filing a false report in addition to the abuse charges you are already facing. I hurt Emma. I confessed because I am guilty. Then explain to me why Emma's description of her abuse does not match your confession. Explain to me why she is terrified of Keith but protective of you. Explain to me why you were so focused on getting her removed from the home immediately. I stared at Detective Collins, trying to decide what to do. My plan had worked, Emma was safe, and Keith's abuse had been exposed. But I was still facing serious criminal charges for my false confession, and I was not sure if telling the truth now would help or hurt my situation. "I want to talk to a lawyer," I said finally. "That is your right. But Harper, I want you to know that if you did make a false confession to protect your sister, that shows incredible courage and love. It also shows poor judgment and could have serious legal consequences. But we want to make sure we have the right person in custody for Emma's abuse." The lawyer who was appointed to represent me was a woman named Jessica Martinez, who had been working with juvenile defendants for 10 years. When I told her the truth about my false confession, she was both sympathetic and concerned. "What you did was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid," she told me bluntly. False confessions can result in wrongful convictions that ruin innocent people's lives. You are lucky that Dr. Reeves recognized the inconsistencies in Emma's story, because you could have been convicted of crimes you never committed. But Emma is safe now, and Keith is going to be arrested, right? Yes, Keith will likely be arrested and charged with child sexual abuse. But you are still facing charges for filing a false police report and interfering with a police investigation. Those are serious crimes that could result in jail time and a permanent criminal record. What kind of jail time? For someone your age with no prior record, probably 6 months to a year in juvenile detention, plus probation and community service. The prosecutor might be willing to negotiate a plea deal if you cooperate fully with the investigation into Keith. What does cooperation mean? It means telling the complete truth about everything you know about Keith's abuse of Emma. It means testifying against Keith if his case goes to trial. It means accepting responsibility for making a false confession and explaining why you felt it was necessary. I agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. Over the next several weeks, I told Detective Collins everything I had observed about Keith's behavior, everything Emma had told me about the abuse, and everything I had documented in my journal and photographs. I explained how I had tried to report the abuse through proper channels and how Mom had refused to believe Emma or investigate my concerns. Meanwhile, Keith was arrested and charged with multiple counts of child sexual abuse. When police searched his belongings, they found hundreds of inappropriate photographs of Emma, as well as evidence that he had been grooming her for abuse almost from the moment he moved in with our family. They also found evidence that Keith had abused other children in previous relationships, establishing a pattern of predatory behavior that stretched back over a decade. The investigation revealed that Keith was a serial child molester who specifically targeted single mothers with young daughters. He would charm the mothers into relationships, gain their trust and financial dependence, then systematically abuse their children while convincing the mothers that any concerns were either imaginary or caused by other factors. Emma was his third known victim, and there were likely others who had never reported the abuse. Mom was devastated when she realized what Keith had been doing to Emma and what I had sacrificed to protect her. She had to face the fact that she had chosen a child molester over her own daughters, that she had enabled Emma's abuse by refusing to listen to her, and that I had been forced to confess to crimes I never committed because she would not protect Emma herself. "I am so sorry," she told me during one of her visits to juvenile detention. "I should have believed you. I should have protected Emma. I should have listened when you tried to tell me what was happening. Why did you not listen? Because I was scared. I was scared of being alone again, scared of losing Keith's financial support, scared of admitting that I had brought a dangerous man into our home. I convinced myself that you were being paranoid because believing that was easier than facing the truth. And now I know that I failed both of you. I failed Emma by not protecting her from Keith, and I failed you by forcing you to protect her yourself. I do not know how to make up for that. You can start by making sure Emma knows that Keith's abuse was not her fault and that she did the right thing by telling the truth. And you can make sure she gets the therapy she needs to heal from what he did to her. What about you? What do you need to heal from what you did to protect her? I need to know that Emma is safe and that Keith will never hurt her or any other child again. Everything else is secondary. I also need you to know that I understand now why you did what you did. You were protecting Emma because I would not. You were being the mother I should have been. And I am proud of you for that, even though I am heartbroken about the cost. The cost was worth it if Emma is safe. But you should not have had to pay that cost. I should have protected her myself. You are right. But you did not, so I did. And I would do it again if I had to. I ultimately spent 4 months in juvenile detention and was sentenced to 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. The judge who sentenced me said that while my intentions were admirable, false confessions undermined the integrity of the justice system and could have resulted in a miscarriage of justice if not for the expertise of Dr. Reeves. Young people should not have to choose between protecting their siblings and respecting the law, the judge said during my sentencing. But when they do make that choice, they must be prepared to face the consequences of their actions. Miss Brown, your love for your sister is commendable, but your methods were dangerous and illegal. You are fortunate that the truth was discovered before irreparable harm was done to your own future. Keith was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He will be required to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life, and he will not be eligible for parole for at least 15 years. During his trial, 2 other victims came forward, children from previous relationships who had been too scared to report his abuse until they saw that someone had successfully prosecuted him. Emma has been in therapy for over a year now, working with specialists who help children recover from sexual abuse. She is living with our Aunt Jennifer, who has applied to become her permanent guardian. Aunt Jennifer is a social worker who understands trauma and is equipped to help Emma heal. Emma visits me regularly, and she is slowly returning to the happy, confident girl she was before Keith entered our lives. "Thank you for saving me," she told me during one of her visits. "I know what you did was hard and scary, and I know you got in trouble because of it. But you saved my life. I would do it again," I told her. 1,000 times over, I would make the same choice. Even knowing you would go to jail? Even knowing I would go to jail. You are my sister, Emma. Protecting you is more important than protecting myself. But you should not have had to make that choice. Mom should have protected me. You are right. Mom should have protected you. But when Mom failed, I stepped up. And I am not sorry about that. I love you, Harper. I love you too, Emma. The more than anything in the world. I am now working to complete my community service hours by volunteering with organizations that help child abuse victims and their families. I speak at training sessions for police officers and social workers about the warning signs of family members making false confessions to protect abuse victims. I also work with teenagers who are concerned about abuse in their families, helping them understand how to report abuse effectively without putting themselves at legal risk. The experience taught me several important lessons about being a woman and about protecting the people you love. First, I learned that sometimes the adults who are supposed to protect children are not willing or able to do their job. When that happens, other people, including children and young adults, have to step up and become protectors themselves, even when they are not equipped or prepared for that responsibility. Second, I learned that the justice system is not always equipped to handle complex family situations where the people reporting abuse are not believed by their parents or guardians. Sometimes you have to find creative ways to get the system's attention, even if those ways are risky or illegal. Third, I learned that protecting someone you love sometimes requires sacrificing your own safety, your own freedom, and your own future. That sacrifice is not always fair, and it is not always legal, but sometimes it is necessary to prevent greater harm. Most importantly, I learned that being a woman means being willing to fight for people who cannot fight for themselves, even when the cost of fighting is higher than you want to pay. It means using whatever power you have, even if that power is the ability to confess to crimes you never committed, to protect people who are more vulnerable than you are. The choice I made was extreme, and I do not recommend that other young people follow my example. There are usually better ways to protect abuse victims than making false confessions. But in my specific situation, with my specific family dynamics, and with the specific obstacles I was facing, my false confession was the only way I could think of to guarantee Emma's immediate safety. And it worked. Emma is safe, Keith is in prison, and our family finally understands the importance of believing children when they report abuse. The cost was 4 months of my freedom and a permanent criminal record, but I consider that a small price to pay for my sister's life and safety. Criminal record will follow me for the rest of my life. It will affect every job application, every college admission, every background check I ever undergo. People will see that I was convicted of filing a false police report and interfering with an investigation, and they will assume I am dishonest or mentally unstable. I will have to explain over and over again why I confessed to crimes I never committed, and some people will never understand or believe my reasons. But I am prepared to live with those consequences, because they are the price of Emma's freedom. Every time someone questions my integrity because of my criminal record, I will remember that Emma is alive and safe and free from the monster who is destroying her childhood. Every time I am rejected for a job or a school because of my past, I will remind myself that Emma's future is secure because of the choice I made. Sometimes being a woman means making choices that other people will not understand. Sometimes it means sacrificing yourself to save someone else. Sometimes it means breaking the law to uphold a higher moral obligation. Sometimes it means accepting punishment for things you never did in order to prevent worse things from happening to people you love. I made all of those choices, and I am proud of every single one of them. Because at the end of the day, Emma is alive and safe and free from the monster who is destroying her childhood. That is what matters. That is what makes every sacrifice worth it. My name is Harper Brown. I am 18 years old, and I am the sister who confessed to crimes I never committed in order to save my little sister from the man who was molesting her. I am the young woman who chose prison over allowing abuse to continue. I am the daughter who stepped up to protect her family when the adults failed to do their job. I am also the woman who learned that sometimes love looks like sacrifice, sometimes protection looks like destruction, and sometimes doing the right thing means accepting the consequences of doing the wrong thing. I am comfortable with all of those contradictions because they resulted in Emma's freedom. And in the end, that is all that matters. Emma is safe. Keith will never hurt her again. And I know that if I had to make the same choice tomorrow, I would make it exactly the same way. 'Cause that is what it means to be a sister. That is what it means to be a protector. That is what it means to be a woman who refuses to let the people she loves be destroyed by the people who are supposed to care for them. Thank you for listening to my story. I have left 2 more stories on your screen. Click on whichever one resonates with your heart. And if you want to join our sisterhood of survivors who refuse to stay silent, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your voice is your power, and it is never too late to use it.